Hey everybody, welcome back. The Bad Pennies are back.
We're back.
I am Sho, and this is my friend Alan. And we're talking about ending relationships. We're talking about breaking up.
Breaking up, yes.
Yeah.
And contrary to the old song, breaking up is hard to do.
Yeah.
It's actually not. No. It's only hard to do if you make it hard.
Yeah.
And
really, it's about honesty to yourself. Right?
Well, so let's back it up a little bit.
Okay, let's go.
Before the breakup, right? So again, in a relationship, what makes it difficult at the end is how you've conducted yourself within it. So if you haven't conducted yourself with integrity and honesty and being upfront with your partner, then what will happen at the end is that there's a tendency to get emotional because of the knowledge that you weren't your best and you didn't give them your best and that you weren't actually conducting yourself in a way that after the breakup that you actually leave them better than you found them, which should be the intention always, whether the relationship is intended to be a lifelong relationship or just a short relationship, that the intention should always be leaving them better than you found them. And this is for women and men. It's not a gender specific context, right?
Okay.
And were you generous?
Okay.
Were you kind? Were you
so evaluating your performance in the relationship itself, right?
and really that's has a lot to do with how it will look when it ends, when it's time to end it.
Okay.
And there are many different reasons to end a relationship, but when you know that it's only going to be a short-term or a recreational type relationship, then it has to end. It has to end. And a mistake a lot of people make is they don't end them. They drag them out. And the longer you drag it out, again, the less integrity there is, and the more you will do things or compromise things, both of you, that will contribute to a very sour and difficult breakup because, again, the honesty, the integrity, the honor, the truthfulness, all of those things that contribute to leaving someone better than you found them are not there.
I want to jump in for a second because not only in my personal experience, but a lot of the experience and a lot of the people that I know have the same experience, whereas when you get into a relationship, it's not necessarily with the intention of it being short term. Well, you go into it with the intention of it being a long-term relationship and then maybe it not work out. Oh,
okay. Well, again, that's it depends on where you are in your life too, and what kind of preparation that you've made, right?
I don't know. Even when I was 18, well, there was no thought about.
I know. I know what I remember. And we know deep down, that it's not. We delude ourselves, and the thing is that at 18, there's hardly any human being on the planet that's actually emotionally stable enough or experienced enough to be able to make a decision that it's a lifelong deal. And a lot of people make mistakes like having babies and stuff way too early, so now they are in a long-term committed relationship, even though that may not have been the best place for them to be. But again, when you've got another life, you've got to take care of it. And that is a responsibility. But that's a different podcast.
Okay.
So, but let's just for sake of argument right now, let's just assume that until you're in your late 20s or early 30s, based on our lifespan. Because it would be different if we only lived to 40, then we'd have to have things happening a little sooner, right? And they did. When people only lived into their 40s or early 50s, then they, marriages happened at a much younger age.
Okay.
Long-term committed relationships started earlier, right? Because people didn't live as long.
Okay.
But based on our general lifespans today, getting married in your 20s is really in most cases, I won't say all cases, but in most cases, it's probably not a good idea. You're just not ready. You haven't done the work to be have all of the things in place that you need to have in place in order to be a good husband, right? And that's the process of all of those short-term relationships, are learning the things that you need to learn about yourself and how to be in a relationship. And so they have to end. And the problem is that men are not man enough these days to end them when they should.
Okay.
All right. So they stay in them until she ends it, and then their egos get hurt because she ended it before they did, and they knew it needed to end. Right? You know it needs to end. But if you wait for her to end it, now she's actually been more of a man than you are, but your ego goes, well, how dare she? But also, again, all of those other factors about integrity and how you conducted yourself, and did you actually do the things that helped her be a better woman? Did she do things that helped you be a better man? And so if you did those things, when it's time to end the relationship, you can do it. I don't even like the word amicably, because I'm not sure that's the right word, but you can do it honorably.
Okay.
And you can do it honestly and with integrity and with care, right? There's a word that nobody uses anymore, and it's too bad because it's a great word. It's called magnanimous. You heard that word before?
I've heard it. I don't think I've used it in context before.
You remember what it means?
No. Go ahead. Tell me.
All right. Well, magnanimous is in general, it has several connotations, but it all alludes to being king-like. And we're not talking about a bad king. We're talking about a good king, who cares about his kingdom and the people in his kingdom. So he's understanding and generous and giving, and those kinds of qualities are considered magnanimous. Okay, being like a very generous king. Okay. And so when you end a relationship, a good way to do that is to be magnanimous. To end it in a way that, rather than just saying, sending a text saying "Don't ever call me again," or I don't know what's the 50 ways to leave a lover thing. It's like hop on the bus and
go out for a pack of smokes. And
don't come back. Don't come back, Jack. So no, because this is a person that you've cared about. Okay. Even if you haven't spent a whole lot of time, you spent enough time that you've developed some level of care for one reason or another. And they're a human being and another life, and you want to treat them with the same kind of respect that you would want to be treated as well. And that's the other thing. If you conducted yourself respecting the other person, then you can end the relationship with respect. Okay. And integrity, right? So, but also be clear, because when a relationship needs to end it.
You rip the Band-Aid off, or do you rip it off? I mean, does it go off slow or what?
Yeah, that's a terrible one. Ripping a Band-Aid off infers pain, and I'm just not sure that that's the right. If you had a painless Band-Aid, then I'd say rip the Band-Aid off, right? Because it doesn't, and sure, if you care about someone and you're not going to be with them ever again, there's inherently a certain amount of either sadness or a little bit of pain or something like that. Okay. Men won't feel that as much as women do. And that's the other thing, men will stay in a relationship because they're afraid of hurting her. And instead of realizing that most women have much more, they have much more facility with their emotions. They're much more in touch with them, and they use them very well. They use them very deftly and masterfully. And for most men, when we do wield emotions, we wield them, like kind of like a bull in a china shop, so to speak. So and so it's not as fitting for us to be wielding emotions. But caring about someone is caring about someone, whether you're a man or a woman. And, but knowing that she might feel some pain is not a good reason not to end the relationship, right?
Okay, yeah. I mean, in my experiences of ending relationships, I think one of the things that I did think about was, do I want to have a friendship afterwards? And that determined what kind of a breakup it was. I mean, there was times when it was like, look, we're done. That's it. That's nothing more.
Okay, so
then there's other times when.
And why would you want to have a friendship afterwards? I mean, that's another question, but that's also another podcast.
I think it was about the quality of the relationship.
Well, it's about the quality of how you leave them.
Okay.
It's not about the quality of the relationship. It's about the quality of how you leave the relationship afterwards, so that if you do pass in the street, you're not both pulling out your knives and trying to stab each other as you go past, right? So and she doesn't go and tell all of the women in her life what a jerk you are, and you don't do the same thing about her. So and it takes a real level of maturity to be able to do that. And so if your relationships have been ending really badly with lots of emotion and hard feelings, it's time to start to take a look at how you're living your life, right? How are you living your life? And conducting yourself in relationships and around yourself. Because most of the time, I would say that it's because of poor behavior that things end that way. And you got to take a look at how that is. And of course, there's most of the time not a reason to have a friendship afterwards, but you also don't want to have bad feelings afterwards either. I mean, energy put out into the universe comes back in some way or another. I think, you could argue with me, but I actually think that we put energy out into the universe, and somehow it gets sent back in ways that we don't really understand, but it does come back. So, you got to decide for yourself as a man, what are you saying to the universe when you how and when you end a relationship? You know that it's over, then it's over. Don't drag each other through the mud. I've seen that happen, where and the longer you drag each other through all of that stuff, the worse it gets. It doesn't get better. Right? It doesn't. You think that just putting it off will just keep the pain from the Band-Aid getting ripped off. But the truth is, it only makes it worse. And in time, then there's regret, and then there's all the time you spent where it wasn't working well, and you feel like you wasted that time, or she feel like, oh, I gave you the best years of my life. It's like, you don't want to go through life having regrets like that. End it when you know it needs to end, when it's just not working. You're clear that it's not working for you, and there's no work that can be done to make it any better, right? And remember that you can't change another person. That's not the only person that you can change is you. And even then, it's a lot of work and time to transfer. We call it transformation, but you can call it change. To do that is a very inwardly introspective way of being. And not only do you have to do that kind of introspection, but then you have to take on the actions that produce the change. It's not just about changing here, but changing everything around you. And doing that in a relationship is very difficult. It's very difficult. And when you start pointing fingers at each other about, you need to change this, you need to change that, or I don't like this about you, or I don't, that's not only petty, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Well, that's not something that you're dealing with in a long-term relationship anyway, right?
Well, in a long-term relationship, there's always going to be stuff that you don't like about each other. And the beautiful thing about that is that those are the things that will draw you closer together when you work on them.
Right. So, okay, most of what we talked about so far, in my mind, we're talking about ending a short-term relationship that we knew was going to be short-term from the beginning,
right?
Or
maybe somewhere down,
point.
somewhere inside. Now you may have manipulated yourself to think that this will be the one.
Yeah.
Because like remember at the beginning of relationships, we're all full of gratitude and how great this is and how wonderful it is, and she's perfect and all of that kind of stuff, or he's perfect. But none of that's true because nobody's perfect. So
right, but what about those situations where you actually are, and maybe you're even in a marriage and it's not working out?
Well, it's not working out because you're not working it. See, it's not that marriages don't work; it's that you're not working the marriage.
The commitment part of it all.
Yeah, well, see, that's the commitment part that tells you what you have to do, even though you don't want to.
Right.
And what I said just a few minutes ago, which is the part of the marriage that, or at least one of the parts, and certainly a significant part, are the parts that you have to work out together. It's not the stuff that you already accept about each other, that you love about each other, what drew you together. It's why you decided to be married and be in a long-term committed relationship. I mean, even those you have to continue to foster by doing those things together from time to time. You shouldn't be doing the areas that you're not compatible. You shouldn't be spending time with each other in those areas, right? You should spend the time you spend together in the areas where you're compatible. Right?
Yeah.
But that being said, those things that are not, there's always stuff that doesn't work. If you go into a marriage and think that it's be clear sailing and you're gonna love each other perfectly and love will keep us together, and I'm quoting Captain and Tennille now, but it's if you think that that's what it's going to be, you're going to be disappointed.
Okay.
And that's what happens. People find out that real life isn't the way that they had fantasized about it,
okay,
and especially with marriage.
Yeah.
And then they get disappointed and they hold the other person accountable to their disappointment. And that's crazy because your disappointment is your own fault.
Yeah.
It's not the other person's.
But for young men who are in this stage of their life where they're still trying to figure out what they want in a relationship,
then be
they
clear.
may be in a short relationship and it's time to end the relationship. You got to be honest. You look at the quality of the relationship, and then when it's time to end it, it's time to end it.
And be magnanimous. And
be magnanimous.
Caring and be bold.
Okay.
And don't give in to fears of how this is going to look, because there's always that. You don't know.
And you don't really care about.
Is she gonna cry, man?
Yeah.
And by the way, we get it. We hate it. When they cry, it's like
damn, I did that.
Your heart melts, and you're like, oh, all right, I'll give it another shot. No, because that's where she's gonna go. That's where they mostly go.
Do women have that whole short-term relationship mentality as well, or is it only a man thing?
Well, no, it's of course they do. It's having those relationships. They're not as valuable to them as they are to us, as far as learning who we are as men and being clear about our place and how to take care of a woman and what works with women, that kind of stuff. They are actually, it's not as valuable to them, in my opinion, only because they're more capable and smarter than we are. So they don't have to do as much of that work. It does have some value for them in the hurt. Falling in love and getting hurt has some value in that. That what they learn from that process. Yeah. After that, there's a lot of short term that isn't actually very valuable for a woman. Other than here's one that's really valuable, is learning how to have fun with men. Okay, and learning what it is about a man that you will accept and what you won't. So that when it comes time to making a choice, you don't fall into the mistake, or that she doesn't fall into the mistake of picking the wrong man because she accepted things about him that really aren't acceptable. And she has to be very clear about that, because first place, women are smarter and more capable in almost every way than men, and especially when it comes to relationships. And because relationships are so important, we're talking about, when it comes to a long-term committed relationship, we're talking about the rest of your life. We're not talking about something small. Short-term is small. Long-term is not small. Right? Long-term is long-term.
Yeah.
And so you want to give it the gravity that it deserves, right? You want to give it all of the value and the importance, and that means that even to get to a place to make that decision, you have to have enough experience of what you want, and at least what you want to get out of the relationship, the marriage, right? Long term, and then be willing to do whatever it takes on your part to have that.
But as far as breaking up in a short-term relationship,
you got to pull the plug, and the longer you delay it, the worse it gets, and the more painful it gets, and the less magnanimous you're going to be, and the less generous that you're going to be, and the less in integrity. Because if you knew that it's time to break up and you don't, then you're instantly out of integrity with yourself, and with the other person too. Because look, it's think of it as a release, both for yourself and for her. Because she gets to move to whatever is important that's next in her life, and so do you. But if you hold on and don't break up when you should, then you're holding her back, and you're holding yourself back. And there's a certain amount of care, right, involved in not wanting to hold her back. So there's think of it in terms, we haven't even mentioned this, but think of it in terms of being selfless, right? And you don't always have to make it about you. In fact, magnanimous is the opposite of being selfish, right? It is a selfless quality, being king-like, being generous and fair and
so because you care about her, you're ending a relationship
so that she can move on.
Okay, that's fair.
Right?
Give me some final thoughts. Give me some final
thoughts. Don't delay when you know that it has to end. Don't stay in short-term relationships any longer than necessary. Really, get the lesson, whatever it is you came to learn. As soon as you learn it, it's time to move on. That's why we call them short-term. Because if they were long-term, then it would be a whole different dynamic.
You would be trying to keep the commitment. You would be trying to do what you got to do.
Yeah, well, you have to do. But in order to be able to be in a place to have a long-term relationship, there's the value of short-term is tremendous, especially for men.
When it's time to break up, it's time to break up.
Yep. So do it.
It's not hard. Whatever the song says, it's not hard.
Yeah, exactly. It does make good music though. It makes for really.
It was probably written by a woman.
I don't think they were.
I don't know.
They were just sentimental men. So,
anyway.
Thank you for listening, and leave some comments down below. Don't just do a thumbs up or thumbs down, especially if you do a thumbs down. We say it again. If you're going to give us a thumbs down, tell us why. Tell us, that you don't like us, or you don't like my hat, or whatever it is. Just let us know. Maybe we can address it.
Okay.
All right. And
we'll take it from there.
Yeah, take it from there.
Bad Pennies. We'll be back.
We will.